Today is Tuesday, March 12th. We'll talk about President Biden's new budget proposal that showcases a real divide between him and Congressional Republicans. Also, intelligence officials have warned about a new Chinese influence campaign on TikTok. And there's new clarification about what critics have dubbed Florida's Don't Say Gay law. Plus, we'll explain the photo editing debacle involving Princess Kate, a change Airbnb is making in the name of guest privacy, and why reports say this year's Oscars was the most watched award show in 4 years. Those stories and more news to know today, next. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. President Biden sent his new budget proposal to Congress this week, asking for larger social programs and new taxes to pay for them. It covers everything from childcare to family and medical leave to housing to healthcare and a lot more. To make up for those increases, Biden wants to increase taxes on people who make more than $400,000 a year. He also wants to raise the corporate income tax to 28%. At the same time, he wants to lower taxes for middle and low-income Americans. The White House says the budget would lower the federal deficit over the next decade. But House Republicans have a plan that would lower the deficit even faster. And they responded to Biden's plan with a statement saying it's, quote, yet another glaring reminder of this administration's insatiable appetite for reckless spending and the Democrats' disregard for fiscal responsibility. Typically, the president's proposal marks the start of the debate with Congress over plans for the next fiscal year, so it's never a sure thing. But this time, Congress is still struggling to approve funding plans for the current fiscal year. So the latest set of proposals is even less likely than usual to become law. Still expect to hear a lot more about it on the campaign trail. A Republican-led House committee released a new report meant to undermine the work of the January 6th committee. It's the culmination of more than a year's worth of investigating, and mostly it pushes back against the panel focusing on former President Trump from the beginning and criticized the overwhelming conclusion that Trump played a role in the violence. Meanwhile, it says the panel failed to answer many obvious questions about security and intelligence failures on January 6th. This latest report also released testimony from former President Trump's driver on January 6th. It's the first extensive eyewitness account of what happened inside the president's armored vehicle to become public. And the driver's account seemed to contradict some of the most sensational testimony from the January 6th panel's public hearings. You might remember White House aide Cassidy Hutchinson testified that Trump actually lunged at a Secret Service agent and tried to grab the steering wheel. Well, the agent who was driving says he does not remember that. He explained that the president was insistent on going to the Capitol with his supporters and was screaming at the lead Secret Service agent to take him there. But the driver says it never got physical. That testimony was never publicly released until now because the January 6th committee reached an agreement with the Secret Service to avoid disclosing information given in their 12 interviews. But Republicans still say they never should have gone with what Hutchinson was saying, knowing there was another version of events out there. In response, former aides to the January 6th committee insisted there was no cover-up and that this Republican committee's report is, quote, yet another attempt to rewrite the history of January 6th and whitewash the events of that horrible, bloody, and violent day. Stay tuned. Voters in more states are getting ready to show up to primaries and caucuses today, and there are enough delegates at stake to make President Biden and former President Trump their party's nominees. Today, 4 states are holding Republican contests: Georgia, Hawaii, Mississippi, and Washington. For Democrats, it's 3 states: Georgia, Mississippi, and Washington, as well as the Northern Mariana Islands. At this point, both Biden and Trump don't have any major challengers left, so they are expected to pick up the delegates needed in a landslide. After that, the plan is for them to formally be nominated at their party's conventions over the summer. And then, of course, comes the general election in 238 days. America's top intelligence agency says the Chinese government has used TikTok to influence recent U.S. elections. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence says China targeted candidates from both American political parties during last year's midterm election cycle, and that its influence has gotten more sophisticated, at times experimenting with artificial intelligence. The office says China's overall objective is to undermine U.S. democracy and highlight American division, and that it especially wants to mold the American public's conversations around its own issues involving Hong Kong, Taiwan, Tibet, and Xinjiang. Other social media companies like Meta have also reported that foreign adversaries like China are using their platforms for influence campaigns as well. In response to this latest report, TikTok says it regularly takes action against deceptive behavior and that it's still working to keep the platform safe during this historic election year. Still, Congress is considering banning TikTok completely, while TikTok has been asking users to speak up against that legislation. To be continued. Britain's Princess Kate is now saying sorry for causing a stir with her latest family photo. She posted the picture of herself and her children to mark Mother's Day, which was celebrated on Sunday in the UK. And it attracted a lot of media attention since it was the first official photograph of Kate since she had abdominal surgery in January. Well, there's been a lot of speculation about her health since the royal family hasn't shared a lot of details. And the speculation did not end with this photo. Several major news agencies ended up removing it when they realized the picture had been manipulated. And Kensington Palace said it would not send a replacement photo. So yesterday, the princess apologized. She explained that she was just experimenting with some photo editing and made some minor adjustments. Well, now more rumors are swirling around her health. This is also sparking conversations about how media outlets should use images or social media clips that don't involve any independent journalists. Much more news is still coming up, but first, thanks to our sponsor, ZocDoc. I know I can't be my best at any other part of my life if I'm in pain or not feeling well. And that's why I keep up with the annual doctor's appointments for myself and my family, and I seek out the right specialist if I'm having an unexpected issue. And while it's a top priority, I know healthcare can get expensive. So finding doctors that take my insurance is so important. And that's why I appreciate ZocDoc. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare highly rated in-network doctors near you and instantly book appointments with them online. Yes, not only is it free, but it also helps me quickly and easily find a variety of credible doctors who have offices nearby, take my insurance, and treat basically any condition I've looked for. And because I do have high standards, I always check out ZocDoc's verified reviews from actual real patients. Check out ZocDoc to find a doctor who makes you feel comfortable, listens, and most of all, works with you to prioritize your health. Go to ZocDoc.com/newsworthy and download the ZocDoc app for free. Then find and book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/newsworthy. ZocDoc.com/newsworthy. Now back to the news. The IRS has launched its free tax filing program for the first 12 states. Starting today, Direct File is open to everyone in Arizona, California, Florida, Massachusetts, Nevada, New Hampshire, New York, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Washington, and Wyoming. That is, as long as they have a pretty simple, straightforward return with limited types of income, credits, and deductions. The whole idea is just to submit returns directly to the government without using commercial tax preparation software. Though it only handles federal returns, so for people who have to complete state returns too, in Arizona, California, Massachusetts, and New York, the software will guide you to a state-supported tax prep tool. The IRS says it's working closely with the first 12 pilot states to help steer the direction of the program in the future. You can check the IRS website now to see if you qualify. Florida education officials and civil rights attorneys have reached a settlement to clarify the law that critics have called the Don't Say Gay law. It was passed 2 years ago, banning schools from teaching about sexual orientation or gender identity. Originally, it just applied to kindergarten through third grade, and then it was expanded to all grades last year. Well, now the settlement is making it clear that students and teachers are allowed to talk about sexual orientation and gender identity. It just cannot be part of the curriculum. So things like anti-bullying rules, LGBTQ+ extracurricular groups, and rainbow flags will still be allowed. The settlement also says the law doesn't apply to books that reference LGBTQ+ characters or couples. Both sides are calling the settlement a win. The group Equality Florida says it's a giant step toward repairing intense damage. And the governor's office claimed victory since the law wasn't struck down in court completely and will remain in effect. The Florida Board of Education will send more specific instructions to every school district soon. Starting next month, Airbnb is banning hosts from having any kind of indoor security cameras. Already, most listings don't report having any cameras set up, but the company has allowed them in common areas, just as long as they were disclosed on the listing page before guests booked their stay. Still, there have been a lot of reports about hidden cameras over the years, so Airbnb is doing away with them altogether, saying it's prioritizing guest privacy. It's also cracking down on outdoor security cameras, saying they will no longer be allowed in certain areas where there's an expectation of privacy, like a sauna. The new policy takes effect April 30th. By the way, another vacation rental company, Vrbo, says it already does not allow any kind of surveillance device in its listings, with the exception of smart devices that guests are able to deactivate. The 2024 Oscars were the most watched in 4 years. In fact, with 19.5 million viewers, it was the biggest audience for any award show since early 2020. And most reports point to one main reason why. People actually watched the movies that were nominated. Oppenheimer and Barbie alone made nearly $2.5 billion at the global box office. But Killers of the Flower Moon and Poor Things also pulled in more than $100 million, so were still considered hits. And that doesn't even take into account all the people who watched the movies on streaming services. Another element that could have helped with viewership, the show started and ended an hour earlier. Granted, even this year's Oscars did not bring in anywhere near the audience the Oscars was seeing back in the 90s. That's it for the main news today, so now it's time for Trivia Tuesday, when we ask a different trivia question every week. But first, a quick break. Of course, I hope you have made this podcast part of your daily routine. And here's another daily habit that can help elevate your life like it does mine. Drinking AG1. It is so simple. 1 scoop of AG1 with water, that's it. I like ice, maybe a little lemon juice, shake it up and drink on the go for your daily dose of vitamins, minerals, pre- and probiotics, and more. In fact, I've recently started using the AG1 Travel Packs. These things are so convenient for when I'm traveling or just have a busy day out and about. I will be packing them, by the way, when I go to a podcasting conference later this month, because AG1 gives me that extra boost of energy that I need to get through those especially long days or chaotic weeks, whether it's for work, like this conference, or just keeping up with my toddler in my daily life. If there's one product I had to recommend to elevate your health, it's AG1. And that's why I've partnered with them for so long. So if you want to take ownership of your health, start with AG1. And they have a great deal for our listeners. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3+K2 and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase exclusively at drinkag1.com/newsworthy. That's drinkag1.com/newsworthy. Check it out. Okay, now back to Trivia Tuesday. And today's trivia question is, what was Taylor Swift's first song to chart on the Billboard Hot 100? You can play along with us in our weekly roundup email that comes out each Friday. As for last week's trivia question, which blood type is a universal donor? The answer is O negative. It's always in high demand because in an emergency, when it's not clear what a patient's blood type is, O negative is the only one that's safe to use on anyone. But unfortunately, it's rare. Only 7% of the population has type O negative blood. Another reason it's consistently needed is patients with type O negative blood can only receive their same blood type, so it's important for hospitals to have it on hand. O-positive blood is also key since it actually ends up being given to the most patients. It's compatible with any blood type that's positive, and that accounts for more than 80% of the population. But no matter what kind of blood you have, you're always encouraged to donate when you can, just so long as you are generally in good health. All right, thank you so much for listening today. Be sure to hit that subscribe or follow button in your podcast app if you haven't already to help make sure you can get new episodes easily each day. We'll be back with another news roundup tomorrow. Until then, have a great day.